a time perspective, welcome everyone. Thanks for this. I realized I was talking on mute. You'd think after Zooming for the last 2 months, I would stop talking on mute, and yet here we are. So good afternoon. Thanks, Chris, for starting us off with some introductions and making my talking head without making any sound a little less awkward. I certainly appreciate you, sir. For the rest of y'all, yeah, feel free to come off video, turn on your video. Feel free to unmute, we'll navigate this as a discussion as a group. I'm gonna share my screen really quickly. We're gonna start first with just jumping into, this is crazy. What do we do to plan for 4 different scenarios? So I'm gonna first start us off with a poll. So I'm about to share my screen, 2 seconds here. So y'all can check this out. And I just like to hear your thinking, because I think this will help me customize this time, just better aligned to y'all's various situations. So if you also don't mind using the poll everywhere function, or if you're like, this is a lot for me and I'd like to just chat it, go ahead and do that too. But I'm curious, like, where is your instincts around, like, what is my school most likely to do? And it's okay to have no idea, but I'd like to get a gauge on where y'all are thinking your schools will land, because again, that will just help me customize some of our deep dive today. So go ahead, give that a rating. I'll go ahead and hop in there too. Great, all right, that part-time as an option, us too.
Caitlin, is option B allowed to include that we start as full-time virtual learning and then move to brick and mortar learning?
You know, that's great. I should have said like some combination of these. Yeah, great distinction there. I really appreciate that, that from you. So thanks for that. I think, yeah, I would say, where do you think you're gonna spend the bulk of your time? But I do think the purpose of this time is for us to think, how do we plan for the fall? So if you're thinking you're starting virtual learning, maybe live there.
Okay, how do I change my response then? Oh,
you know, I'll just keep that in mind.
I got it.
Oh, you got it. Okay, great.
Yep.
All right, nice. So seeing most of us are thinking full-time virtual or part-time virtual. Great, I'll give just like 30 more seconds here. Thank you all for your thinking. And again, I think this will just help us in looking at the return to school roadmap, because that's what we're gonna dig into next. So Sarah, if you wouldn't mind sharing that link one more time, just so it's easy for people to copy and paste out of the chat. And so if you've already responded to the poll, go ahead and take that, pop that into your internet browser, and let's take a look. What I'll be doing, and I'm gonna shift slides now because I have a sense for where people are at. Let me just go ahead and do this, and I'll take a look at the chat really quick. Let's see what we got. Okay, so a couple D's, the on again, off again. All right, that's something to be conscientious of. And then let me just skip my slide here. Here we go. All right, so resource exploration. We're gonna take some time and look at the return to school roadmap and explore. So the directions for this time is, I want you to, regardless of your role, I want you to select the best bucket to align to your role. For us, I'm going to model the instruction deep dive. So if you're mostly instructional, feel free to follow along with me. If you're not though, feel free to turn off your camera if you'd like. That can kind of signify who's with me and who's not. And you'd like to explore operations or logistics or things like that. All right, so I'm gonna give this a click. I think this will allow me to show this to you all. Great. So as I mentioned when we were talking earlier, this is a resource where public education and public health meet, and it's a guide for, it says district and school leaders to plan and implement a safe and efficient, equitable return to school. But I think there's gems in here for all of us, regardless of the roles we play in schools, just to think big picture about what this could look like. So when I first took a look at this, I've spent most of my time in school operations, facilities, and instruction. But we'll take a moment and explore instruction here. So I'm just gonna walk you through this resource and then give you some time to explore. So you notice that each of these are comprised by the big picture bucket, and then like the essential actions that need to take place to ensure that students academically and social emotionally are ready to effectively transition back to instruction in classroom. You'll also notice off to the side, you can click district leaders or school leaders. I'm a school leader, and I think whether you are or you aren't, it's again helpful to look at the school specific lens as opposed to the district, I guess, unless of course you're in the district leadership role. So you'll notice again at the top, the first item is do first. So what should we be thinking about right now? What's the first thing we need to do as we start this process? What do we do before schools open? And then what do we do when schools are open and operating? And so for me, as I'm thinking about next year, I also believe that my school will be doing a hybrid model of both. I'm thinking through, okay, yeah, like how do I need to be communicating with my CMO or a charter school? How do I need to be communicating with my charter authorizer around what's going on? And so one of the first steps I took was like, let me set up a meeting with my charter authorizer and think through what's possible and what their expectations are for the fall. Also establishing a committee on my instructional leadership team, or working with even some of our teammates are collaborating to think, gosh, what does student support look like for next year? What does this look like? And what is our virtual structure that guides that? Strengthening intervention programming and social emotional supports. So here in New Orleans, for any of you who might be joining us from here, after Hurricane Katrina, we had to think really strategically about how do we make up for lost academic time? How do we account for the social emotional needs of our students? I don't know about you all, and I think Ben mentioned this a bit, but we do have families that are sick, and we have families who have lost members of their families. And I think that we need to be exceptionally sensitive to that and be thoughtful. I just met with my art therapy team, something that we believe in our model is art therapy, and said like, gosh, we need to go into this school year expecting kids' needs to intensify, expecting families' needs to intensify, and we need to be ready to meet them. So what does that look like? And then as well as like a technology use survey. And so I've been grounding my thinking in what this looks like. I'm going to give us maybe 3 minutes. I don't want to rush us too much, but I want to make sure we're cognizant of time and respecting y'all's time by ending in a timely manner. I'm just going to set the timer for about 3 minutes and give each of you a chance to explore whatever buckets, dig more into do before school opens, or even when schools are open and operating. But I want you to think about like, what's the most critical priority for me right now? What do I need to explore, and how can I use my time? All right, I'll put 3 minutes on the clock and then I'll check back in. I know that's not a lot of time. Should also mention that my 2-year-old is in the background, so if you hear any shrieks, just keeping it real, y'all. He's downstairs and he's 2, terrible 2s. So if you hear him, he's fine, I promise. All right, folks. So obviously 3 minutes is not enough, but I hope that this at least gives you an overview of what this website looks like. And I think you might have noticed me highlighting a couple things. I think, again, depending on your role, you can think, where's my entry point? Like, where are of the multiple bullets that are here, whether I'm student facing, if I'm student support, if I'm teacher facing, if I'm, gosh, like any variety of roles that you have, is thinking, okay, like, where does my role intersect with one of these key priorities? How am I coordinating with my peers and my colleagues, as well as with my leadership, around what needs to be prioritized, and what work can we be doing now to prepare for this uncertain future? From here, I'm going to shift back to my presentation. Let me go. Oh, great, perfect. This is here. Go to the next page. All right, so what I'd like to do here, and Sarah, if you wouldn't mind sharing that next link, is I wanted to create some time just for some shared brainstorming. So acknowledging that anytime we're facing a crisis or a challenge, adversity, yes, the challenge is there. We need to acknowledge it. We need to look it dead in the eye and say, like, you know, we're not backing down. I think similarly, though, sometimes there can be opportunities that exist that we haven't considered about what's possible around this new future. And I think that it's helpful for us to ground ourselves there. So as soon as Sarah shares that, you're going to head to this Google Doc, and it should be shareable with everyone. Let me know if you have any issues there over the chat. What I'd like you to do at this time, great, thanks, Sarah, appreciate it. And I see a couple of you hopping in now, but what I'd like you to do is choose a scenario that you think is likely. And so I think we talked about, most people said full-time virtual learning, part-time virtual learning, part-time in-person learning. Oh no, we're gonna close soon. Okay, so I just thought that this breakout room might close really quickly. So what I'd like to invite you to do is to continue this dialogue, and take an opportunity to think through, what is this likely scenario? And then what are the opportunities and challenges that potentially exist? And my hope is that by each of you providing a moment to just share a quick blurb in this document, we can all learn from each other about different perspectives around, like, what are the biggest challenges around these scenarios? What are the biggest opportunities? And how can we engage in that growth together?
Caitlin, can you give edit access?
Oh yeah, so sorry, it's not edited.
That's okay.
Oh, I'll fix that right now, folks. We're about to close out, but please add your thinking in, and I'll hopefully have a moment just to share about that when we're back in the total session. And I'll also share my contact information in case any of you would like to talk more one-on-one. Thanks for your time.